Welcome back to the Fixed Ops Roundtable. And we've heard so much at previous events about voice technology. Google has been here, and we've discussed that with a number of retailers. We're really honored today to have the folks from Brooke with us here today, talking a little bit about how voice technology is transforming that customer service experience today, and also lowering operational costs. So I want to go ahead and welcome our panelists. They are Lawson Owen, who is the CEO of Brooke, as well as Jason Beckett, the Chief Operating Officer, also of Brooke. I want to welcome Greg Stolrow, who is the Chief Financial Officer of McKenna Cars, and also Alex, the BDC Director at McKenna Cars. Welcome, everybody, to the Fixed Ops Roundtable.
Thanks for having us, Ted.
Thank you, Ted.
Lawson, this is a conversation that's really, I think, long overdue because to get into depth on how voice technology is really transforming the industry and how it's transformed so many other industries where the retail automobile industry is really following right now.
Yeah, we deal with it every day in our life, our own personal life as well as our business life. And so what we tried to do here at Brooke.ai was to leverage a lot of the historical speech data that we had to really bring a unique offering to the automotive industry and service specifically. Interacting with a digital voice assistant, again, is commonplace, whether it be Siri, Alexa, or even Google. You had mentioned Google. The reality is that we move through the next year or two. By 2024, there's actually going to be 8.4 billion interactions or units that are out there in the marketplace by consumers and businesses that leverage a digital voice assistant. And we see it in commonplace with airlines and credit card companies and things of that nature. So we thought it was a great time to bring it to automotive. And certainly with the onset of the pandemic and COVID, we found a great place in the market for Brooke.ai.
Yeah, and it's really not just automotive. It's all sectors that are really diving into digital voice assistants. One interesting thing we've seen is purchase transactions over the years, how that's increasing, and consumers are becoming more interested in purchasing through voice technology. In 2020, $2 billion was sold through voice technology, where consumers actually purchase through a digital voice assistant. By 2025, it's supposed to be $164 billion. That's a 630% increase in just a few years. And why is that interesting? Because me giving someone my money or something my money is the highest form of trust. And so this is a great indicator that consumers are really becoming more interested and open to using this type of technology.
I think that's the big thing is the biggest challenge with different or new technology is the rate of adoption. And from a dealer's perspective, we know that the rate of adoption is there. From the consumer's perspective, we just have to help the dealer get comfortable leveraging that technology, which has all sorts of customer experience, CSI benefits, in addition to saving a lot of money.
Wow. When you mentioned the trust, that really hits home. And I would totally agree with you. As consumers, which we all are, we're all seeing and we're interacting now with digital assistants, whether we realize it or not. Jason, tell us a little bit more about that data again that you're seeing, because I really think that the audience needs to know a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so we have a call monitoring tool called Caller CX that's been in the marketplace for many years. We use AI to track and record calls into the dealership. So we see a lot of data around what happens with those calls. 65% of ROs are from inbound calls. It's the largest lead source for fixed ops drive. And so what we see in addition to that, though, is 20 to 30% of those calls fail. They're lost, dropped, or abandoned. And with the great resignation right now, that's actually even higher. So the largest lead source for a service drive, they're losing about a third of those just from not answering the phones. The ones that do get answered, we're seeing a high hold time, anywhere from 7 to 10 minutes for many dealers. So that's really where a digital voice assistant can help, is to eliminate that problem where all calls are being answered and they're being answered quickly and effectively with no hold time, so you're providing a better customer experience.
I also think it's important to understand the negative or adverse effects it has on the dealer's brand, right? The dealership name, but also obviously the brand, whether it be Ford or Toyota, whatever it is they might be selling. So those struggles or challenges that the consumer has in connecting with an organization adversely affects the brand, the customer experience, your CSI scores, obviously your revenue potential. And so that's a real problem that exists in every dealership in North America.
Yeah, Lawson, you're so right. From a consumer's perspective, there's probably nothing more frustrating than trying to connect with a dealership, over the phone, and all the things, Jason, that you're mentioning now with the Great Resignation. These are a lot of challenges that dealers have. Greg, talk to us from the retail perspective. What are you seeing now? Going back even pre-pandemic to all the things that have happened in the last 24 months.
Well, we've already seen that things have come back in terms of fixed ops. We've got more folks on the drive. We have people that are anxious to get their car serviced. I think that the business as a whole is kind of at a place. It's in a turnaround mode more than in anything. Before we had seen some months strong, some weaker, and now we're seeing some pretty steady volume. Our BDC department was down to 4 people at the beginning of the pandemic, and then through the pandemic, and we're up to an average of probably 6 people in there on a given month. And we're very, very busy, and we're doing a lot more campaigns now. We're finding that it's valuable to do those things because we've got the interest of the consumer. Probably our challenges really are actually nothing to do with anything we're talking about here today, but they directly do have some impact, which is loaner cars are very difficult to obtain. Every dealer has that problem. It's not just us. And so that's impacting service. And I'll let Alex describe that a little bit because she's front line with that. And then also just in general, finding technicians and having enough people to service the consumer. And we find that we've had challenges there too, but we're breaking through those. But Alex can talk to you a little bit more about some of the other pains that she's seen on the front lines.
And if I may, Alex, before I come to you, Greg, just to follow up,
Yeah.
Did you know you were missing calls in service in the BDC, pre-pandemic, going back a little ways?
Yes, we did. And we knew that because we use Proactive for our call center management system. And we knew we were missing somewhere in the neighborhood of like 14 to 20%. And most of those calls were on the front and back of the day. So it wasn't necessarily during the day, but most of them front and back, we were missing calls primarily.
Okay. Yeah. And I would agree with you. I think most dealers, in their heart of hearts, and general managers know that they're missing a volume of calls. Yeah. Alex, talk to us from your perspective, what's happening in the BDC.
As Greg mentioned, we had a smaller staff when I first joined the company. And so one of the first directives for me was to bring in a staff that could properly handle all of our calls and actually focus on making outbound attempts as well. As you mentioned, a high volume of the calls are inbound, and so a high volume of the ROs are inbound. That's given, right? And so the focus of a business development center should always be to develop business. And so with having something like Brooke, we're actually able to do outbound campaigns, increase the number of touches on clients that aren't reaching out to us. And we know that the calls that are coming into the store are handled no matter what, whether it be outside of the hours of the BDC operation or during the day when my staff is making outbound attempts to clients that just haven't thought about servicing their cars recently.
And Alex, talk to us about the people, because with all the things that we're hearing and seeing now with the Great Resignation, has this helped you, in terms of the staffing and the people and being able to address those inbound calls coming in?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, staffing is really difficult in general. It's even more difficult right now. When you find good staff, then you run into issues of people calling out sick or having personal things going on. Nothing is perfect, right? As Greg mentioned, we have an average of 6, but on a given day, we might have 4 people here. We might have 6 people here. It's just kind of dependent on what's going on in everyone's life. And so being able to know that even if I have someone call out sick or if I have to let someone go, the calls that are coming in are still handled is really, really important. And it means that our store does not suffer because of, humans, which are unpredictable.
That's right. That's right. It's a people business.
Yeah.
Jason, talk to us a little bit for our audience. How does Brooke help with a lot of the challenges that we're hearing about, right now between Greg and Alex?
Yeah, so within the service drive, about 75% of the calls coming into a service drive are routine requests. So they're hours of operation, when can I bring my vehicle in, pricing. And that's really what a digital voice assistant helps to do, is take on those inbound calls, handle those routine requests, right? So 75% of those calls can be handled by a digital voice assistant. And that allows then the BDC, like Alex was mentioning, and then focus on the outbound revenue generating calls. It also helps them focus on specific campaigns so they're not getting distracted by, the fragmented inbound calls that are coming in. Within the service drive, it also helps with the service advisors. Now they're not being distracted by the inbound calls, that they can actually focus on the customers in the drive and providing, a great customer experience, whether that be walk around or just, helping the customer.
Lawson, talk to us. And by the way, this makes a whole lot of sense for dealers watching. Lawson, how does this help in delivering a consistent experience for the consumer as well?
That's a great question. And I think everyone, we've touched on it a couple times here, and certainly Alex did too. The whole purpose or intent of a business development center is to develop business. And the reality is every outbound call is a retention call. Regrettably, though, those campaign calls, those outbound calls, those proactive calls are probably some of the most neglected calls within the service department or within the dealership. And so what we need to focus in on is not only the reactionary side, which Brooke obviously helps greatly, but also how do we free up our staff, especially if we have a limited staff or a green staff. I think what we've seen through the Great Resignation and certainly the pandemic is a lot of our talent has left, and we're starting over. So you have different employees at different maturation rates, different skill sets. So Brooke actually allows you to free up those people so they can focus on those retention calls, those campaign calls. If we don't retain or maintain the relationship with our service customers, they're not going to come back to us. There's a lot of options out there in the marketplace, whether it be other dealers or some of the independents from a service perspective. We have to focus on those retention calls.
I like it. Alex and then Greg, anything you like to add to that?
No, I think that was pretty well put. My staff, some of the people that I have are new to the auto industry, and I've been able to work with them on focusing only on outbound campaigns. So they answer, maybe a handful of inbound calls every day, but they're averaging, between 40 and 60 outbound attempts a day to clients that we have not reached out to. So, that's really important to us to grow our business.
Yeah, I would say. Greg?
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, Alex is right. What Brooke allows us to do is really to have more flexibility, whether it be the staffing issue, which we've had, or, for example, something she didn't mention, the other day we had the store where we have the BDC the whole parking lot's being resurfaced. And she had to send everybody home at around 1:00 in the afternoon because it was just the fumes were too rough for them to continue to work. And I guess I don't know, Alex, you might be able to tell me. I didn't ask you yet because it only happened last week and we haven't met on this. But how many calls we actually were able to cover with Brooke for that afternoon? Because I'm sure we were fortunate to have Brooke that day.
She set 52 appointments.
Wow. I love it. And Greg, nothing more real world than that, right? Because that's the stuff that's happening every day in our lives.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, it was the only thing we could do. And that 52 appointments would never have happened had we not had Brooke.
Right.
Now, Greg and Alex, I know a lot of our people in our audience work in dealership, and we even have a lot of BDC managers who are watching today. And I can imagine some of them, Greg, are thinking right now, okay, This makes sense, but is the intent of Brooke to replace the staff at the dealership? And that's got to be a question they're thinking, Greg, is, talk to us about that.
Yes, and in fact, we had a little pushback from the one veteran in our group. She's one of our best, and she was freaking out when we put Brooke in. And, we kind of held the line and said, look, this is what we're going to do. And really, our response for Brooke was to cover the bookends of the business, the before hours and after hours. And we expect that our team does their best job in the middle of the day. I believe that you probably could, given even our example of the other afternoon where we took 52 calls, appointments, I should say, we could replace somebody, but we're not intending to do that because we still want that touch. We want that high touch feeling. And I think that, we're going to have those people dedicated more to outbound than inbound. They get paid more for outbound than inbound. And so really, as it comes out, it's a win for everybody because the pressure of handling the inbound calls isn't as great. So when we've got 4 or 5 agents all making outbound calls, they can do that with some level of intention and not worry about the 4 or 5 calls that are ringing while they're in the background while they're actually taking the time to make some outbound calls. So no, we haven't had. I think everyone's calmed down now in that regard. And I guess Alex, you work with them every day, but I don't sense there's any issue with it. And they thought their job was being not as much loss as they were going to lose money. That was the bigger thing, I think, than losing their job.
Well, being able to adjust the pay plan to really focus on outbounds and to reward outbound attempts was one of the first things that Greg and I worked on when I joined the staff. Because with the introduction of Brooke, the focus was always to get those clients that weren't calling in. Replacing staff has never been our intent, simply because, Jason mentioned 25% of the calls that come in are not simple, right? Those calls need the human touch. Those calls end up transferred to a human because of additional concerns or questions. And so if there was no BDC staff and only Brooke, those people that were calling in with more complex issues would be completely frustrated. So it's a stopgap for the simple things so that our staff can focus on outbounds and campaigns and retention. But it's not a replacement in any way. And, calming our staff by, rewarding them for their efforts for the outbounds was really one of the first ways that we were able to kind of get everyone on board. Yeah. And now, when I had to send them home because our office was just filled with asphalt fumes, no one was stressed out that they were going to miss out on money, right? Because they knew that Brooke was there to answer the phones. And so the next day we all said, oh, can we guess how many calls she took? Can we guess how many appointments she set? And they're into it now. They're a fan of Brooke as much as the rest of the company is.
I'm becoming familiar now with this persona of Brooke because we're referring to her as she now. So, by the way, Alexandra, I love that story about the paving. Talk to me about, things like holidays and closures. I would imagine that Brooke helps you with calls about that as well.
Hilariously, Thanksgiving Day, we had something like 25 calls and 5 set appointments. And I was laughing because I was like, what car dealership has ever been open on Thanksgiving? I can't think of a single one. And here we are getting service calls with people actually setting appointments on Thanksgiving Day. And so, without Brooke, there would be those 5 appointments that were missed out on. And that sounds like a really small number, but that's 5 people who would be frustrated and probably never call us again if they hadn't been able to just quickly set their appointment when they wanted to.
I love it. A great point, Alex. Jason, this is really amazing. Okay. Some of the things that we're hearing here. For those of us who aren't familiar with exactly what a digital voice assistant can do for service, I'm learning some of the things right now, but tell us more.
Yeah, I think what we talked about earlier, like digital voice assistant is perfect for handling those routine requests, right? So we talked about 75% of calls coming in are routine FAQs. Overall, 62% what we're seeing are customers calling in to book an appointment. And that's where a digital voice assistant does really well. So digital voice assistant or Brooke is meant to answer, handle, and appoint your inbound service calls. What's great about a digital voice assistant is that it's your best service coordinator at scale. Whereas, a human can only handle one call at a time, a digital voice assistant can handle thousands of calls simultaneously. So as your dealership inbound calls fluctuate throughout the day, you don't have to worry about staffing, right? That overflow can just go to Brooke and you can keep your staffing pretty steady. You pair that with also integrating a digital voice assistant with your scheduling tool or DMS. Now you can provide a very consistent experience where the digital voice assistant is booking the appointments the way you want them to be booked, right? What vehicles do you want to service? What services do you want to offer? Thinking about transportation options, service advisor capacity, shop capacity. The digital voice assistant takes all that into account, and so they really become your best service coordinator because they're always following your policies. We actually have a clip to play for you. It's a real clip of a customer, just how they've set up Brooke to handle transportation options. So I'm hoping we can play that now for you.
I have options for transportation I can offer you while your vehicle is being serviced. Note that if you choose just to drop your vehicle off, I can get you in up to 3 days sooner. So, would you like to drop off your vehicle, wait for it, or hear the transportation options I have?
Wait for it.
So, Greg, take us through that call and some of the areas with some of the challenges that you mentioned earlier as well.
Well, we mentioned before that we've had issues with folks not being able to get a loaner car. And so what we were having happen was folks would go through the Brooke process and then they would call back and they'd mine the system to get to a real person. And then they'd say, do you really not have a car for me? I don't understand this. I don't understand why you don't have a car for me. And so we started to have this, and what was happening is Brooke actually became more of a problem than a solution for a short period of time, because we were literally taking those calls twice. Once when they logged in, and then second time when they call back. And so what happened is we asked if Brooke could be set up so that we answered the issue and addressed the issue of the rental car or loaner car at the beginning of the call, so there was complete understanding, and that was set before they went all the way through the entire process. And it saved a tremendous amount of time doing that. And so I think that's just one of those things where everything needs tweaking a little bit. That would probably be the one single area that we've had a challenge with. I mean, we can't control the technicians or things like that. And, fortunately, we're linked with the DMS, so our appointments that are available through Brooke are only the appointments we can provide. So there's never really an overbooking going on. But the rental car thing was something they literally invest 2 or 3 minutes, 4 minutes in the process. And then they're like, shoot, man, I'll keep my appointment. I'm going to call back. And that just, we had to find a way to deal with that.
Okay. Jason, are customers really ready to schedule their service appointments using this type of technology?
Yeah, so there's two factors that we track, or 2 KPIs we track to really understand, the customer experience and whether customers are willing to work with this technology. The first is containment. So how well does a digital voice assistant do to contain the call within a digital voice assistant without having to transfer out? And we mentioned earlier that's about 75%. So 75% of the time, digital voice assistant or Brooke is able to handle that call from beginning to end. There's certain calls that do have to be transferred. They're either more complex conversations that need to be had with a service advisor, or they're, transfers to a different department, that kind of thing. The second is the appointment rate. So how often does Brooke or digital voice assistant actually, complete the task of, the main task of booking an appointment? And there we're seeing about 65% plus with our top performers. So, and that's all driven by the scheduling tool and how you're configured and how you want those appointments to be handled. So yeah, we're very happy with the results and the progress digital voice assistants are making in the market.
Jason, great points. And if I'm a dealer or a general manager or a fixed ops director or a service manager watching right now, Greg, let me come back to you. You've mentioned, and Alex has mentioned also, some of the things, as you went through and, implementing Brooke at your locations, at your 9 rooftops. Anything else we need to know about, when you first introduced Brooke that we need to be aware of, in going forward?
I'm honest to God, it was the easiest implementation we've ever had. When I think about CDK contracts and other things we've done in this place, implemented, intelligent accounts payable solutions, e-payment systems for cashiering. This thing was it was not even on the radar, to be honest. And I mean, literally, we did it almost immediately when Alex arrived. And I mean, I think it was the first thing she did, and she didn't even have a staff yet. It was amazing how easy it was, in my opinion. I mean, and again, along the way now, the tweaks haven't been that hard either, and learning how to use it. I mean, you don't need a lot of training to use this tool. And I think that's the hallmark of it. It's kind of a no-brainer. In fact, I can tell you that when I introduced this, at the time I was really heading up fixed ops for a while while we didn't have someone in that seat. And I had one of the service managers check it out, and then he brought his findings to the meeting, and literally there wasn't any pushback. In this place, there's always pushback. Not one person said no to using Brooke.
Wow, it's almost bulletproof from what I'm hearing. Alex, talk to me from the BDC manager perspective. You talked about things earlier, such as pay plans. How are the BDC managers going to be, receiving this when they think about the technology and, like you said, how some of their folks are and how they are compensated as well?
Well, first of all, it's funny. Greg mentioned it was the first thing I did. I think I started on a Monday. I think we set this up on a Wednesday of the same week. So I hadn't even had a demo on it, nothing. And it was incredibly easy to set up. Speaking of the Great Resignation and, the challenges that we've had during the pandemic, you can't have a 7-day-a-week BDC anymore. You can't have the boiler room, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., 7 days a week covering the phones. It's just not possible with what's going on in the world. And so, BDC directors should look at this as something that kind of takes some of the weight off of their shoulders in terms of handling calls at all hours of the day, helping customers at all hours of the day, and it lets them manage their staff. I can pull my staff off the phone and have meetings with them about what we need to accomplish. And no one is stressed out about answering a call if it comes in, right? Because Brooke is there to answer the phone. We can do growth training constantly, and it actually lets me work with my team and improve my team on a daily basis rather than letting things snowball because we're so worried about the immediate of answering the phone. So BDC directors should look at this as a tool to free them up to actually manage a staff instead of be so focused on, ticky-tack, like one call here, one call there. That's not the way to grow a department, and it's not a way to manage a staff. So we have to move forward and embrace this technology so that we can be better as managers.
So, Alex, let me come to you with my last question. Any other insights you can offer into how my dealership, if I'm watching this right now and I want to think about it, how am I going to prepare my people at the dealership level for a new digital voice assistant? Any insight that you can provide to our audience there?
Yeah, Brooke is an assistant. Brooke is an extension of your department. She is another employee for the dealership who, to Jason's point, can answer many calls simultaneously. All dealerships have to do is be ready to embrace the technology and say yes. If you're ready, all you have to do is let Brooke know. They're super communicative and helpful, and you can look at this as an extension of your team. So, how they're ready to do it is just say yes, embrace the technology, move forward.
I love it. Lawson and Jason, great job. All right, so if I'm watching this right now and I want to take the next step and learn more about Brooke.ai, what do I need to do? How do we get a hold of you?
Yeah, I'd say just visit the website, reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to share with you how Brooke works, what the power and the potential and the opportunity savings would be for your organization. And I think the first thing we'd ask you to do is to just open up your mind. Acknowledge the reality of the struggle or challenges of getting your service calls answered. acknowledge the reality of the staff struggles that we face in today's market, and then give Brooke a chance. You know, trust is hard for most dealers or organizations. So have Brooke handle after hours and overflow and see how she performs for you. The reality is we schedule almost 10,000 appointments a month just in after hours and overflow calls for stores. So just go to Brooke.ai and check it out.
And it's going to continue to grow, Lawson. I could see it right now, and it's happening all around us. So, you know, if I wait, you know, my competitors may not be waiting as well. So, you know, great job, everybody. Both Greg and Alex from McKenna Cars, thank you so much for being with us today on the Fixed Ops Roundtable. And Lawson and Jason, thank you so much for all that you and Brooke and that she is doing for the industry. So really enjoyed hearing about this solution. And I want to invite you to come back and tell us more about it at the next roundtable.
That'd be
Thanks,
great.
Ted. Appreciate it.
All right. The panel from Brooke here today at the Fixed Ops Roundtable.